What happens when you humiliate your husband so hard that he brings your lover's wife to your own front door? How far can a quiet man go, using only screenshots, dates, and legal forms, when his wife insists she is just talking and he is the real problem? Can you still call him controlling when he introduces you to your lover's wife and then lets the papers speak for him? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. Tamsin. That is my name, and I am not the crazy one here, no matter what people say now. I am the one who wanted more from life than quiet dinners and tired small talk on the sofa. I wanted to feel wanted, seen, chosen. My husband, Rowan, says that is where everything started to go wrong. I say that is just when I finally stopped pretending. It did not begin with a kiss. It began with a message. Jonas wrote that my joke in the meeting was the only smart thing said all day. I told him he was exaggerating. He said he was not. Simple, clean, easy. I told myself it was harmless. I told Rowan it was just work chat. I remember the moment I screamed, "Who is this woman here?" at the stranger in my living room. I remember Rowan replying that she was my lover's wife. Everyone acts like that was the big shock. For me, the real shock was that he had planned it. Quietly, patiently. With dates and screenshots and things I did not know he kept. He never raised his voice. He raised something else instead. I told myself I was not doing anything wrong. The first time Rowan looked at me like a problem, I was standing in our small kitchen, leaning against the counter with my phone. Mara was at the table, drawing little cats. My phone buzzed again and again. I kept smiling at the screen. Rowan asked who I was talking to so much. I said it was just Jonas from work. He asked if something was wrong with the project. I said it was nothing big, just small things. I added that at least someone at my job noticed my ideas. Rowan watched me for a long moment. He said it seemed like Jonas messaged me at all hours lately. I laughed and told him he was acting like an old man who did not understand normal work life. I said people at my office actually stayed in touch, even when they were not sitting at desks. I told him, if he worked somewhere modern, he would know that. He did not snap back. That was the annoying thing about him. He just went quiet. He picked up the plates and took them to the sink. Mara looked between us with those big eyes. She asked if Daddy was sad. He said he was just tired. I wanted him to say he was wrong, not tired. I turned back to my phone. Jonas had sent a joke about our manager. I sent back a laughing face and wrote that, at home, I was stuck with serious faces only. The next morning, I rushed through breakfast because I was late. While I dug through the drawer for my keys, I noticed something new. There was a thin binder standing up inside the cabinet where we threw random letters before. In Rowan's straight, neat handwriting, the word utilities was on a label. I asked when he had become a filing system. He said he was just trying to keep track of bills better because we always lost things. I said he could have told me before he decided to change everything. He replied that it was only a folder, not a law. I rolled my eyes and said he always made boring things bigger than they were. At work, everything felt lighter. The open plan office hummed with noise from phones and keyboards. Jonas came by my desk and asked in a soft voice if I had survived domestic life after the long shift yesterday. I told him Rowan had made a small drama over my late messages. He chuckled and said some men did not like competition. I said there was no competition because Rowan was not even in the same game. Jonas told me I was fun to talk to because I did not act like a mom all the time. That sentence sat in my chest like a warm stone. At lunch, I sat with Nadia and told her Rowan had complained about how much I texted Jonas. She laughed and said I needed to train him better. She said men who were secure did not care who their wives talked to as long as they came home. I liked that line. It sounded strong. I repeated it, told myself a secure man would not be bothered at all. On my way home that evening, My phone buzzed again. Jonas had sent a voice note about some silly thing at a client call. I listened in the stairwell of our building instead of walking straight up. The echo gave me privacy. He said my sarcasm in the meeting had made his day. I told him, in a message back, that he was the only one who got my humor. Just as I hit send, I heard the building door open below. Rowan came up the stairs with a grocery bag in one hand. He saw my phone in my hand and asked if everything was okay. I told him it was just Jonas asking about a ticket in the system. He nodded slowly and said it seemed like Jonas needed a lot of help outside office hours. I said that was how it was in tech now, always on. I added that maybe if he moved out of his dusty warehouse job, he would understand. The words came out sharp. I saw them land. He only said that he was glad Jonas valued my time so much. That night, after Mara was in bed, I walked into the living room and saw Rowan on the sofa with his laptop. The screen showed a spreadsheet. There were initials and dates in neat rows, some highlighted. For a second I thought it was work. Then I saw a few entries that looked like normal calendar days. Before I could read more, he tapped the keyboard and the spreadsheet shrank into a small box at the corner. He said he was just checking some numbers. I asked why he closed it so fast if it was boring. He said screens got in the way when people wanted to talk. I sat down across from him and crossed my legs. I said we could talk if he wanted. He looked at my phone instead. He asked if I was still talking to Jonas then. I said he was the only one at work who understood pressure. Rowan replied that he understood pressure too. He just did not text women at midnight to relieve it. I told him there was nothing wrong with having friends. I said he was trying to control who I could connect with. He shook his head and said he was only telling me how it felt. Later, in the kitchen, my phone buzzed again while I rinsed dishes. Mara called out from the doorway that my phone was dancing. I laughed and told her phones did that when they were happy. Rowan reached over, flipped the phone so the screen was face down, and said we were having family time. I snatched it back and said he did not get to decide when my family time ended. He answered that he thought we all should. I told him that if he trusted me, he would not care who was on my screen. He went quiet for the rest of the evening. When I called my mother-in-law, Helen, she asked how we were doing. I told her Rowan had started to act strange about my work friends. She said he was always sensitive and that I should be patient with him. That annoyed me more. I told her maybe he should be patient with me instead, since I was the one juggling a job and a child. She replied that she knew I carried a lot, but that Rowan loved me. I hung up feeling like everyone wanted to make excuses for him. When we finally went to bed, the room felt crowded, even though it was only the two of us. Rowan lay on his side, back to me, breathing slow. I scrolled through my phone, reading Jonas's old messages. He had written once that if he had a partner like me, he would never let her feel unseen. I liked to read that one again and again. It made me feel like there was a different life just slightly to the side of mine. As I reached to plug in my phone, I saw a small light from Rowan's side of the bed. His own phone had lit up, silent. On the lock screen, a calendar reminder sat at the top. Archive 9:30 a.m. I frowned and asked what that was. He said it was nothing, just a small task he had set for himself. I asked if he was building a museum now. He said he was just putting things in order. His voice was flat. I told him he was becoming more boring every day, with his binders and reminders. He did not answer. I turned away, annoyed, and stared at my own screen. Jonas's name sat near the top of my chats. A new message preview slid down. A simple note about wishing he could hear more of my jokes outside the office. I smiled before I read the whole thing. The next few days I told myself I was only adjusting to a new balance, not starting anything wrong. At work, Jonas stayed at the top of my screen. He sent me a meme before I even sat down, about long meetings that could have been emails. I replied that if they cut meetings, I would have less time to make him laugh. He wrote that my jokes were the only reason he went to them. Simple words, but they wrapped around me like a warm coat. When I looked up, I caught Imani watching me. She smiled, then turned back to her screen, like she had decided not to ask. Nadia wheeled her chair over and asked what I was grinning at. I told her Jonas was being stupid again, in a good way. She asked if Rowan was still doing the jealous husband routine. I said he had found a new hobby, spreadsheets and binders. I rolled my eyes and told her he had labeled a folder utilities. She laughed and said he sounded like her father. She added that if he kept acting old, he could not complain when I enjoyed attention from younger men. I pointed out that Jonas was older than Rowan. She said age did not matter, energy did. Later that week, we had another long planning session. Jonas sat next to me at the meeting table, not across. Our knees almost touched under the desk. During a boring slide, he leaned over and whispered a quiet comment about our manager's fake smile. I bit my lip to keep from laughing out loud. Nadia caught my eye and raised her brows, like she was watching a show. After the meeting, Jonas suggested coffee in the break area. We stood by the machine while it hissed. He asked how things were at home now that Rowan's investigation had started. I said it was nothing like that, but yes, Rowan had started asking a lot of questions. Jonas shook his head and said some men said they trusted their wives, but still needed proof. That word, proof, stuck in my mind. I told him I should not have to prove anything. He agreed and said that if a partner was happy, they did not look for reasons to be upset. I came home that night ready to be angry at Rowan, even before he spoke. He was at the dining table with his laptop again, a stack of paper beside him. I saw more binders now. Home, auto, bank. He had written the labels in that same neat way. I joked that he was turning our life into a filing cabinet. He said calmly that we had been messy for too long. I said I liked messy. It meant we were alive. He said some parts of life needed structure. He asked how my day was. I said it was fine and that Jonas had helped fix a big client issue. Rowan nodded and asked if Jonas always needed my help after hours too. I told him he was obsessed with one name. I said if he trusted me, he would not care how often I talked to a coworker. He replied that he trusted me as much as my behavior allowed. That line stung. I told him he was twisting things. He went quiet again and went back to his laptop. I walked behind him as if I was just going to the kitchen, but I looked at the screen. A spreadsheet was open, not like the ones from work. I saw a column of dates, another of short notes. At the top, there were our initials. Some cells had lines like late return, Jonas call, argument kitchen. My stomach flipped. Before I could read more, he pressed a key and the window vanished. The desktop stayed, clean except for a few folders. He said he did not like staring at numbers when I was home. I said he loved staring at numbers more than at me. He said nothing. Later, while I made tea, I heard the small printer on the side table jerk awake. A page slid out, blank. The smell of toner filled the room. Rowan stood up and went to check it. I joked that even the printer was confused by his new obsession with paper. He said he was testing it. I asked for what. He said just to be sure it still worked. The answer annoyed me because it was too simple. I told him he was making me feel like he was building a case. He replied that he was organizing, not attacking. I did not believe him. The next morning, he left early. Mara and I had cereal alone. While she hunted for her shoes, I saw an envelope in the little outgoing tray by the door. It was unsealed, flap open. I could see only a plain white top, no letterhead. I picked it up. It felt heavier than a single page. Before I could slide it out, the door opened and Rowan came back in, saying he had forgotten his keys. He saw the envelope in my hand and paused. I asked what it was. He said it was something he needed to drop off on the way to work. I asked if it was for me. He said it was about the house, so yes, about both of us. I asked why he had not told me. He said he had planned to, just not that second. He took the envelope, slipped it into his bag, kissed Mara on the head, and left again. At work, my manager stopped by my desk and asked if I had a moment later. His face was neutral. That made me nervous. I went back to clicking through emails, pretending nothing was wrong. A few minutes later, a notification popped up on my own phone. Nadia had tagged me in a story. I opened it. It was a photo from the last meeting, Jonas leaning close to me while I laughed, the caption joking about office crush energy. My heart jolted. It was one thing to feel it, another to see it frozen like that. Shortly after, my manager called me into a small glass meeting room. He sat with his tablet in front of him. He said he wanted to ask about boundaries at work. I asked what he meant. He turned the tablet around. There, on the screen, was Nadia's story. Me and Jonas, shoulders almost touching, my hand on his arm as I leaned in. Underneath, someone had sent a message saying this looked a bit more than professional. He asked if there was anything he should know about my relationship with Jonas. I said it was friendly and that we worked well together. He asked if I felt pressured by Jonas in any way. I blinked and almost laughed. I said no, of course not. Jonas was respectful and funny. I added that it felt unfair to even be asked that, since I was the one who gave Jonas ideas, not the other way around. He nodded slowly and said perception was tricky. I said perception was other people's job, not mine. He replied that in a company, everyone shared that job. I felt exposed and angry. I told him my husband had become jealous and that someone close to him might be stirring things. I said Rowan did not like my male friends and had a habit of making drama. My manager frowned, said he did not want to be in the middle of my marriage, but that it would be wise to keep things clearly professional. I said they already were. He let it go. When I came out, Nadia was waiting. She asked what he said. I told her HR had been looped in because someone could not mind their business. Nadia smirked and said, people hated seeing women enjoy attention. Imani, at the next desk, looked up briefly and then down again. I noticed how she did not join in. On my break, I messaged Jonas, saying someone had sent our photo to HR and it was a whole thing. He wrote that he was sorry his stupid face had caused trouble. I told him he was not the problem. Small minds were. He replied that I deserved better than suspicion at work and at home. That line made my anger at Rowan flare again. That night, Rowan came home later than usual. He put his bag down in the hallway and washed his hands. I asked if he had enjoyed his mystery errand. He said it had gone fine. I told him about the HR talk, but I told it in my way. I said someone had tried to turn a harmless photo into a scandal. I hinted that I thought it might be him. His face went still. He said he had not sent any photo to anyone. He added that if other people saw something worrying, perhaps it was not just his imagination. I told him he was blaming me for other people's dirty minds. I said he was breaking my trust by making me look bad at work. He replied that I had done a fine job of that without his help. I called him cruel. He did not raise his voice. He just walked to the living room, opened his laptop, and put on headphones. As I stood in the doorway, his phone, lying on the table, lit up. A preview of a message at the top showed a thread called Follow Up. I saw only a few words before he reached over and turned it face down. I asked what he was following up on. He answered that he was making sure nothing important got lost. His tone was calm, too calm. I told myself that if people were already watching, I might as well give them a show. The weekend after the HR meeting, a few of us from work planned drinks by the river. It was one of those long summer evenings where the sky stayed bright too late. Nadia begged me to come, said she needed my energy. Jonas messaged that he would be there too. I told Rowan it was just some co-workers by the water. He asked if Jonas would be there. I said yes, because I was not hiding anything. He asked if he could come along with Mara for a walk. I said if he wanted to stand there like a security guard, that was on him. We met near the food trucks along the riverside promenade. The path was crowded with families, joggers, couples holding hands. Nadia waved from a bench, already holding a drink. Jonas stood nearby, hands in his pockets, relaxed. When he saw me, he smiled in that gentle way, like we shared a secret. I felt lighter with every step toward them. Nadia introduced us all again, like we were in some kind of show. She joked that Jonas was our office comic, and that I was his sharp co-host. I laughed and leaned against the railing. When Rowan arrived with Mara, I watched Nadia's eyes flick over him. Nice enough clothes, tired face, steady walk. She leaned toward me and whispered that he looked too serious for a riverside. It made me feel like we were on the same side. Mara ran to me and hugged my waist. I kissed her head and asked if she had fun with Daddy at the park. She nodded and pointed at the river. Rowan joined our little cluster, but stayed just far enough away from Jonas to make a point. He asked how my week had gone. I said it was fine, and that HR had backed off once they saw there was nothing real. I added that the only real issue was his paranoia. Nadia laughed too loudly. Rowan looked at Jonas and thanked him for helping me at work. He said he hoped the extra time did not keep Jonas from his own wife and child. Jonas gave a tight smile and said his wife knew he sometimes worked late. The tiny mention of her pressed against me like a sharp edge. I did not want to think about her. I slid closer to Jonas and made a joke about how some people thought work ended at 5. Nadia cackled. Imani, who had joined us briefly, just sipped her drink and watched. I started telling the story of the HR meeting, but I told it my way. I said some busybody could not handle seeing a married woman and a male coworker laugh together. I hinted that I thought it might be someone close to home. Eyes turned toward Rowan. I said he had been keeping lists and making comments, like a detective in a bad show. People chuckled. Rowan stayed calm. He said he had never sent any photo. He asked if it was really fair to spread half-true stories about him. I said he was calling me a liar now. Nadia shook her head at him, like he had broken a rule. We moved along the promenade, buying snacks, passing buskers. I made sure to walk between Jonas and Rowan, the center of both worlds. At one point, a group gathered around a street musician. I used it as an excuse to lean into Jonas when someone bumped me, laughing into his shoulder. I felt Rowan's gaze on us. I told myself he needed to see that I was wanted. He asked quietly if we could talk somewhere less crowded. I said if he had something to say, he could say it like an adult, not drag me aside like a child. He said he did not want to fight in front of friends. I told him he was already doing that by acting like I was cheating. A few heads turned. The music played on, but I could feel the space around us shift. Jonas stepped slightly back, pretending to look at his phone. Nadia stayed close, eyes shining. Imani drifted away, joining another small group. Rowan said he never used the word cheating, that he only talked about how things looked and felt. I laughed and called him dramatic. I told him if he had any faith in me, he would not care who I laughed with. I said men who were secure did not need to monitor their wives' group chats. He looked down at Mara, who was hanging onto the rail, watching ducks. He said he did not want Mara growing up thinking this was normal. I replied that what was not normal was a father who could not let the mother talk to friends. Nadia made a face and muttered something about patriarchy under her breath. A couple nearby glanced over. Phones were already out everywhere. It did not take much to tilt one toward us. When the sky dimmed, we decided to head back. Nadia and a few others went toward the metro. Jonas said he had to meet someone and left with a quick half-hug for me. Rowan offered to walk with me to the parking garage under the office building where we had left the car earlier. I agreed, mostly because I wanted this argument done. In the parking garage, everything echoed. Our footsteps, the beeps of car locks. The air smelled like oil and dust. Mara hummed to herself, walking a little ahead. Rowan stopped by the car and turned to me. He said he did not want to live like this. Public arguments, careful words, constant watchers. I snapped that I was not the one making scenes. He said I had just turned a quiet talk into a public spectacle. I said if he did not like how he looked in the story, maybe he should act better. He rubbed his forehead and leaned against the car. He said he needed honesty, not performances. I said maybe he should start by being honest about why he was suddenly tracking our bills and time. He said calmly that when someone kept telling him his reality was wrong, he had to find some solid ground. I told him he was being dramatic again. Mara tugged on my sleeve and asked if we were going to be late for the cartoon she liked. I forced a smile and said everything was fine, just grown-up talk. On the drive home, I noticed his phone on the dash. A small banner popped up at the top of the screen. Meeting, personal 6:40 p.m. I asked what secret meeting he had now. He tapped it away and said it was something he needed to handle on his own. I said if I had a personal meeting with a man at that time, he would lose his mind. He said he was not hiding anything. He just did not owe me every detail right now. That hit me in a weird way. He had always overshared before. I blamed my discomfort on him. The next afternoon, I stopped by the pharmacy after work to grab something for Mara's cough. The line was long. I had time to get annoyed. On the phone with Nadia, I vented. I told her Rowan had embarrassed me at the river by acting like some sad, jealous shadow. I said he stood there like a guard watching every word. I told her I was tired of married men who acted like they owned women. Nadia called him old-fashioned and said I should get used to doing life my way without his approval. As I talked, I noticed the woman behind the counter watching me. Dark hair pulled back, tired eyes, pharmacy badge clipped to her chest. She rang up customers quietly. When it was my turn, she asked if I needed anything else. Her voice was polite, but there was a question deep in it. I wondered if she knew me or Rowan from somewhere. I brushed it off. That night, after we put Mara to bed, I walked past the guest bedroom. The door was half open. The shredder hummed softly, then stopped. I peeked in. Rowan sat at the small desk, feeding another piece of paper into the shredder. Beside him, on the table, sat 3 binders. Home, auto, bank. His laptop showed a neat list of folders on the screen. Home, auto, bank, and another simply called archive. As soon as he saw me, he minimized the window. I joked that he was turning into a clerk. He said he was tired of chaos. I said chaos meant you were alive. He replied that some chaos was just damage. We went to bed separately that night, him later than me. I lay in the dark, scrolling through comments on Nadia's riverside photos. Some people had tagged me, calling me Chaos Queen and too real. I told myself that meant I was strong, that people admired my honesty. I ignored the 2 comments asking why my husband looked so sad in the background. The next time I looked up from my phone on the promenade, the light had been soft, warm. The next time would not be so soft. When the real crack came, it did not feel like a crack at first. It felt like a family day. Helen called on a Thursday evening and asked if we could come over Sunday for lunch. She said she wanted to see Mara and also talk about how things were going. I heard the tone and knew she meant the river, the photos, the tension. I told her we were fine, and there was nothing to talk about. She said she would feel better if we all sat down anyway. When I told Rowan, he just nodded and said we should go. The way he said it made me feel like he and his mother had a plan, and I was the one being invited in last. Sunday at Helen's house felt stiff from the start. The TV was off, the table set too carefully. Mara ran in first, excited about Helen's old toy box. Luca sat on the couch, scrolling his phone. He looked up and said he had seen some of the river videos. He asked if we were doing reality TV now. I laughed too loudly and said someone had to make life interesting. Rowan just took off his shoes and went to help Helen in the kitchen. At lunch, the food was good, but the air was heavy. People tried normal talk about work and school, but it kept circling back. Helen finally put down her fork and said she was worried. She said she had seen clips of me online, making jokes about jealous husbands. She asked if everything was all right between us. I said we were fine, just having a rough patch, and people liked drama. She asked if there was something going on with my coworker, Jonas. I snapped that everyone needed to stop sexualizing every friendship. She looked at Rowan and asked if he felt disrespected. He said he felt hurt and embarrassed, yes. He said it was hard to see his marriage turned into content for other people. I rolled my eyes and said he always made himself the victim. I told them I worked hard and deserved to have fun sometimes. I said a man who truly supported me would not try to shame me for being liked. Luca asked if we wanted to take this off camera and nodded toward the phones on the table. I said if people could watch my marriage on Instagram, they could handle a little honest talk at lunch. Helen's mouth tightened. She asked again, quietly this time, if there had been anything more than talking between me and Jonas. I let the silence stretch, then said I was insulted she would even ask. I told her she sounded like some old aunt from a small village. Her face fell. Rowan did not jump in to defend her, or me. He just listened. Then he pulled a small notebook from his pocket and wrote something down. I asked what he was doing. He said he was noting what was said, so he would not mix things up later. I laughed in disbelief and said only controlling people kept little books on their spouses. He answered that people who were always told their memory was wrong sometimes needed notes. That line made me feel seen in a way I did not like. After lunch, Helen suggested we all go to a children's craft event at the community centre down the street. She said it would be good for Mara. I did not really want to go, but Mara's eyes lit up. Rowan said he thought it was a good idea. So we went. The community centre hall was busy and noisy, full of kids at tables with glue and coloured paper. Parents stood by the walls with coffee cups. Mara ran to a table with other kids. Rowan followed at a short distance. I stood with Helen and Luca, trying to pretend everything was normal. Then I saw him. Jonas, standing near the far wall, in jeans and a plain shirt, looking out of place, but trying to act calm. My chest tightened. I had never seen him in this kind of setting, around kids and families. He lifted a hand in a small wave when he saw me, like he did not know what else to do. Before I could react, I noticed the woman next to him. Dark hair pulled back, the same tired eyes I had seen at the pharmacy. She was holding a small child, talking quietly to another parent. When she turned, I recognized her face. The pharmacist. She recognized me too. For half a second our eyes locked. Something heavy moved between us. Rowan walked over to them with Mara, like this was all rehearsed. He greeted the woman first, then Jonas. He bent down to say something to Mara and sent her back to the craft table with Luca. Then he led Jonas and the woman toward where I stood. My heart thumped hard enough to make me feel a little sick. When they reached us, I stared at the woman. Everything in me wanted to push her away. The words came out before I could stop them. I asked who this woman was and why she was here. My voice was louder than I meant. Heads turned. Rowan looked straight at me. His face was calm, in a way that scared me more than shouting would have. He said the woman standing there was Elin. Then he said Elin was Jonas's wife. He added that she was the one I had been cheating on him with Jonas behind. The hall went quiet, or maybe it just felt that way to me. I laughed, too loud and sharp. I said that was ridiculous, that Jonas and I only talked, that everyone needed to stop dramatizing. Elin watched me with this mix of pain and cold. She said, in a low voice, that she had seen messages, calls, late-night logs. She said she did not want to be here, but she needed me to hear that this was not just talking to the people around us. Her tone was controlled, but her hand shook on the stroller handle. I told her she was reading into things because she was insecure. I said she should talk to Jonas if she was unhappy, not attack me. Jonas murmured that no one was attacking. He looked as if he wanted to disappear. Rowan stood there, still calm. He said he had asked Elin to come because he was tired of being the only one who saw the full picture. He said he wanted the people involved to be in the same room at least once. More parents were definitely listening. I felt my face burn. I told Rowan this was pathetic, that he had dragged some poor woman into our business to make me look bad. He said he had asked Elin because it was also her marriage I had stepped into. That word, stepped, made my chest tighten. I told him again he was exaggerating everything. Helen whispered that we should not do this here, not in front of the children. No one really moved. After a few more tense minutes, Elin said she was taking her child home. She told Jonas they would talk later. She gave me one last look, like she was memorizing my face, then left. Jonas mumbled something about needing air and followed. The room slowly went back to its noise, but the shift was real. People avoided my eyes. At home that evening, the tension came with us. Rowan said we needed to talk properly, with no kids, no other people. I said I was done talking. I told him he had humiliated me by bringing that woman into a place where our daughter could see. He answered that Mara had not heard the words, but she would feel the broken trust if nothing changed. While I paced in the kitchen, I opened the fridge. On the door, a new sticky note stared at me. In Rowan's neat writing, "Bring forms." On the calendar next to it, a date next week was circled in red. I asked what forms he needed. He said it was boring paperwork. I said he had a lot of boring paperwork lately. He did not deny it. We moved to the living room to keep arguing. Mara stood in the hallway, peeking around the door frame with her stuffed rabbit. Helen sat on the armchair, silent, like she knew this was bigger than her now. Rowan stood by the window with his small notebook. I snapped that he could put the notebook away, that this was not a police interview. He said he was just keeping his head straight. I told him his head was the problem. Then the doorbell rang. I stormed to the door, still hot with anger. When I opened it, Jonas stood there. Behind him, to my shock, was Elin again. They both looked strained. I turned my head and shouted to Rowan, asking why this woman was here, why he had brought her into my home. My voice cracked. The old line came out again, louder. I asked who this woman was, like I had not heard it already. Rowan came to the doorway, calm. He said she was my lover's wife. He did not raise his voice, just let the words land. Behind me, I heard Mara gasp and ask Helen what a lover was. Helen pulled her back gently. I tried to twist it. I told them all they were making up a story around nothing, that this was just talk, just texts. Elin said texts at 2 a.m. were not nothing. Jonas stared at the floor. Rowan did not argue. He simply stepped back and let them fill the space with facts I did not want named. At some point, I noticed his laptop open on the coffee table. A small black box popped up in the corner for a second. File uploaded successfully. He closed the lid when he saw my eyes there. I felt something cold move up my spine. Later, after they all left and Mara was finally in bed, she came to our doorway in her pajamas. She asked if I loved Jonas more than Daddy. The question hit like a brick. I told her of course not, that she was confused, that adults just talked loudly sometimes. She looked at me for a long moment, like she did not quite believe me. After that night, the house did not feel like mine anymore. It felt like evidence. For a few days, nobody yelled. That almost felt worse. Helen came by more often, saying she just wanted to help with Mara. She took her to the park, baked with her, kept her out of the rooms where the air was heavy. Rowan stayed polite, almost formal. He told me when he would be late, when he would be in the guest room, when he would pick Mara up from school. It was like living with a careful stranger. The guest bedroom stopped being a spare room and became his room. I pretended not to care. I told myself he was being dramatic, acting like some sad hero in a cheap show. But every time I passed the doorway, that room pulled at my eyes. The bed was made too neatly. The desk was clear except for his laptop, a small notebook, and one USB stick with a date written on it in black pen. Once, I saw the laptop screen before he could close it. 2 main folders sat there on a clean desktop, Archive A and Archive B. No mess, no random icons. It looked like a life sorted into boxes. I went to work and did what I always did when I felt small. I made noise. Nadia met me at the elevator and pulled me aside. She asked what had happened with the pharmacist woman. Word had already traveled. I told her Rowan had dragged my co-worker's wife into a community hall like we were at some public trial. I said he had set me up, made me look like some cheap cheater when I had only ever talked. I left out the late-night calls, the messages, the way my heart jumped when Jonas's name appeared. Nadia shook her head and said he sounded unhinged. She told me to post my truth before he made up his version. At my desk, I recorded a story for my followers. I did not show my face fully, just my hand around a mug, the edge of my laptop. I said some partners use silence and facts like a weapon. I said being watched all the time felt like a cage. I never said Rowan's name, but I left just enough for people who knew us. The reactions came quickly. Little hearts, fire emojis, messages saying I was brave, that I deserved someone who trusted me. Imani watched me from across the open-plan space. On break, she walked over and said she hoped things at home were calm for Mara's sake. I told her everything was under control, that I was just being honest. She said sometimes honesty in public could hurt children who had no say. Her words bothered me more than any of Nadia's praise. I brushed them off, but they stuck. Jonas, on the other hand, did not stick. He kept his distance. He still said hello in the office, still made small jokes in meetings, but he stopped staying behind after hours. He did not suggest coffee. He did not send late-night messages. When I messaged him one evening saying I felt like everyone was against me, he replied that things had become complicated and he needed to focus on his family. I stared at those words for a long time. I told myself he was just scared of Eileen, not actually done. I said out loud to no one that you could not blame a man for choosing the easier path, but underneath I felt dropped. At home, Rowan's changes kept growing. He stuck a whiteboard to the side of the fridge. Each morning, he wrote the date at the top and simple notes. Who did school drop-off? Who did pick-up? Any evening plans? When I asked if he was running a factory, he said he wanted everything clear so there were no confusions later. I said he meant no excuses. He didn't deny it. One afternoon, I got to the school pickup line early. Cars were lined up along the curb. Parents stood in small clusters talking. I checked my phone and saw a new comment on my story. Someone asking if I was safe at home. It thrilled and annoyed me at the same time. I wanted them on my side but did not like that they thought I was a victim. Rowan's car pulled in behind me. He stepped out, walked around to my window, and asked if I had told the office we were changing pickup days. I said I did not need his permission to pick up my own child. He said calmly that the school liked clear information. I snapped that everyone in his life loved clear information more than people. He did not bite. He just nodded and walked back to his car. When the bell rang, Mara ran out. She saw both our cars and froze, looking from one to the other. A teacher bent down and asked which parent she was supposed to go home with that day. Mara hesitated, then pointed at Rowan's car. I felt something sour rise in my throat. As they walked past, she glanced at me with a small, guilty look, like she had chosen a team. I wanted to shout that it was not a team, that Daddy was the problem, not me. That evening, she sat at the table with her crayons, quiet. She asked if Daddy and I were still married. I told her of course we were, and she should not listen to silly adult talk. She asked why Daddy slept in the small bed then. I said he liked to snore in there. She said he did not snore when she stayed over with him for stories. Rowan, filling the dishwasher, kept his head down, but I saw his jaw tighten. After she went to bed, the house grew smaller. I walked down the hall to the guest room and leaned on the doorframe. Rowan sat at the desk again, headphones around his neck. The laptop screen showed a spreadsheet, initials, dates, short notes. A small pop-up in the corner flashed and then faded. I caught the words "file uploaded successfully" before it disappeared. I said he was turning our whole life into a file. He said he was making sure he did not forget important things. I laughed sharply and asked if he planned to send a report to my followers. He shook his head. He said this was not for the internet. He said this was for when feelings faded and people tried to change the story. I told him he was the one changing the story, making normal marriage problems into crimes. His phone buzzed on the desk. The screen lit up with an alarm titled, "Paper Drop, 3:45 p.m. I read it out loud and asked if he was writing a novel. He turned off the alarm and said it was a reminder for some documents he needed to deliver tomorrow. I asked what kind of documents. He replied that they were about the house, the bank, and Mara's routine. I said he was planning something behind my back. He answered that he was planning something for when I stopped pretending nothing had happened. I felt a flare of panic and covered it with anger. I told him he was weak, that a real man would fight for his marriage instead of hiding in a tiny room with his files. I said he was giving up because he could not handle a little competition. He looked at me calmly. He said he had fought for a long time, but I had turned every effort into a joke or a post. I tried a different angle. I said he was threatening me with papers, like some movie villain. I said he could not manage bills on time before. Now he was going to manage the law. He said calmly that he had asked for advice and learned what he needed. The idea that he had gone to someone else, talked about us, made my skin crawl. I told him he was betraying me. He said I had already done that. For a moment, we just stared at each other. The air hummed with the silent shredder and the faint buzz of the fridge. I could feel that something big was close, but I told myself it was just another phase. I said he would calm down once he realized I was not leaving. I said he would see that Jonas had backed off and feel stupid for overreacting. I needed to believe that. He stood up, closed the laptop with one firm click, and picked up his phone. The screen, for a second, showed that same thread at the top. Follow-up, with new messages marked. He locked it before I could see more. I asked what he thought he was going to do with all his notes and alarms. I told him if he tried to shame me in public again, I would scream louder. I said people were already on my side. He looked tired, not scared. He said, in a very quiet voice, that this was not about public anymore. He said this was about what was written down and what could be proven. He added that he was done begging me to care. I scoffed and asked what that meant. He looked me directly in the eyes. He said he was going to handle it properly. The way he said properly was not a threat, but it settled heavy in my chest. I told him he was bluffing. I told him he had no idea what he was doing. He did not argue. He just picked up his keys from the tray by the door. I noticed, suddenly, a new small key on his ring, one I had never seen before. The next week, I walked into the office tower lobby, ready to complain to Nadia about paper threats and silent treatment. I was halfway to the elevators when a man in a vest stepped in front of me, said my full name, and asked me to confirm it. I did. He placed a thick envelope in my hand and said I had been served. On top, divorce petition, temporary financial and possession orders, a parenting schedule naming Rowan as primary weeknight parent to Mara. Through the glass doors, I saw Rowan and Elin standing together as I read.